E3 2019 has been a weird one. EA decided not to hold a conference and instead share updates on some of their biggest games through live streams from their own EA Play event. Sony, meanwhile, decided to skip E3 altogether and not have any presence at the expo at all, making this the first E3 ever to not have Sony involved. Meanwhile, with the next generation of consoles right around the corner, it also felt like conferences this year were almost winding down by either holding back on new announcements or not sharing a lot of details on the announcements that they did make. That, plus the fact that a lot of the most major announcements got leaked beforehand, dampening a lot of the excitement. Microsoft were the first to take the stage. With Sony not in attendance and Microsoft making all of the right moves with Xbox over the last couple of years, they were well positioned to steal the show and deliver an absolutely stellar showing. In the build-up to the Xbox E3 briefing, Microsoft confirmed that they'd be bringing 14 first-party games to their showing, and it certainly felt like they were ready to pounce and hog the spotlight in the absence of their biggest competitor. Sadly enough, that turned out not to be the case. On paper, if someone were to list out all that Microsoft's conference did show off and reveal, it sounds like a dream E3 presentation. Gears 5, Halo Infinite, Ninja Theory's Bleeding Edge, From Software's Elden Ring, Tales of Arise, Cyberpunk 2077, Borderlands 3, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. That's an impressive list of games, and that's only scratching the surface of what was present at the Xbox presser. But the thing is, a lot of it seemed like it was present at the show just to check boxes. Because none of those games showed any gameplay at all, and if they did, it wasn't very substantial. Fallen Order received a very short trailer that showed very little that EA hadn't already shown the day before. Bleeding Edge was explained to us, and there were snippets of gameplay in its reveal, but it needed far more attention to really sell us on it. Gears 5 is a game we'd seen nothing of since E3 2018, and Microsoft, bafflingly enough, decided to show no campaign footage at all, instead focusing on multiplayer aspects, and we didn't even get to see gameplay for that. Cyberpunk 2077 received a CG trailer, which was not bad as trailers go, but didn't really do what it needed to. Show us the game in action. Though, I have to admit, seeing Keanu Reeves and that April 2020 release date sure was hype as heck. At least Halo Infinite looked good. It showed off an excellent in-engine trailer that really sold the game's excellent new narrative direction, and seeing Chief back in action was a delight to one and all. At least as far as Halo is concerned, not seeing gameplay was somewhat understandable. This is going to be their tentpole release for 2020, the game that they'll be selling Project Scarlet on the back of, so sure, it makes sense that Microsoft would want to wait until next year to do the big gameplay blowout. And that brings us to Scarlet, of course, the biggest news to come out of the Microsoft press event. Microsoft spoke about the next generation of Xbox, speaking about the things we can expect to see from its hardware side of things. A custom processor, ray tracing, GDDR6, and an SSD. It's all very impressive, but also what most of us have been expecting from a next-gen console, especially in light of confirmation of the PS5 specs. This was also accompanied with the announcement that Scarlet will be releasing holiday 2020 with Halo Infinite as a launch title, which means we'll be getting a lot of concrete information on both of them around this time next year, so we definitely have something to look forward to at E3 2020. Microsoft's E3 briefing was also a victim of leaks. There's no doubt that a lot of the announcements and reveals we just spoke of would have had a lot more impact and been more gratifying if we hadn't known about them beforehand. But sadly, we did. Elden Ring? Leaked. Tales of Arise? Leaked. Bleeding Edge? Leaked. Halo Infinite's 2020 release? Leaked. Project Scarlet's spec reveal? Leaked. Sure, that's not Microsoft's fault, and I'm not faulting them for those leaks. It's just worth mentioning that if not for all of these leaks, the conference probably would have been a lot more impactful than it ended up being. Bethesda's conference had a lot of the same problems as Microsoft's presser. The highlight of the show was obviously Doom Eternal, as we'd all been expecting in the build-up to the show. Bethesda showed off a sizable chunk of gameplay from id's upcoming shooter, and it looked exactly as good as it needed to, and exactly as good as we'd known it would be. The announcement that the game would be released in November of this year was also certainly a crowd-pleasing moment. They had a couple of new games to announce as well. The horror title Ghostwire Tokyo. Arcane Studios also unveiled what they'd been working on, a first-person action game called Deathloop. Both were exciting announcements because of the developers that are attached to them, but really, we don't know much about either of these games. We know their names, yes, and we have a rough idea of what they're about, conceptually. But again, we got no gameplay. We didn't even get release dates or information on what platforms these games are launching on. And yes, leaks ruined plenty of surprises here as well. Fallout 76's expansion and Battle Royale mode got leaked. Ghostwire Tokyo and Deathloop both got leaked. Hell, even the stuff about the Elder Scrolls Blades coming to Switch and Rage 2 DLC got leaked. Essentially, there was very little in Bethesda's show that came as a surprise, which would have been fine if their showings had been good, except they weren't. They either felt muted because of having no gameplay footage whatsoever, or not very substantial because of being updates on games that are already out. At least as far as the issue with gameplay is concerned, Ubisoft's conference was a bit better. They kicked things off with a thoroughly impressive reveal for Watch Dogs Legion, showing off the game's impressive and ambitious idea of being able to play as any and every NPC in the game. After that, though, things kind of tapered off. Ubisoft shared updates on For Honor and Rainbow Six Siege while they announced Rainbow Six Quarantine, a sci-fi co-op PvE shooter that looks interesting, but again, we saw next to nothing of it, so it's hard to say for sure either way right now. And of course, Ubisoft and leaks go hand in hand. Watch Dogs Legion, Rainbow Six Quarantine were all leaked before the Ubisoft show began. Square Enix smartly got ahead of the leaks by confirming long before the show that they'd be bringing both Final Fantasy VII Remake and Avengers. Those two were obviously the pillars holding up their briefing, and there's no doubt that they both didn't disappoint. Final Fantasy VII Remake especially looked exceptional, and is probably going to be the game of the show for many people. And though we're going to need to see and hear a lot more about Avengers before being sold on it, at least we've finally seen it in action. Both of those games bookended Square Enix's press event, and while they both had good showings, everything between those two felt like a lot of fluff. But hey, Final Fantasy VII Remake alone made Square Enix's show one worth watching. With the likes of Microsoft and Bethesda having disappointed with their conferences, Ubisoft presenting a very muted show, and Square Enix going all in with one or two games but letting the rest be a dull affair, it fell to Nintendo to salvage something out of this E3, and boy, did they deliver. Nintendo's E3 Direct presentation was just a barrage of one major announcement after another. Long-awaited games that we already know about, like Animal Crossing and Luigi's Mansion, got gameplay reveals, with Animal Crossing New Horizons getting a release date as well. The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening looked excellent in its gameplay trailer, with Nintendo confirming that it would be launching in September. Funnily enough, that also got leaked. There were new trailers for imminent releases like Fire Emblem 3 Houses and Astral Chain. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate revealed new DLC characters in the long-requested Banjo-Kazooie, which is one of the most crowd-pleasing moments to come out of the entire Direct. There were also plenty of major third-party ports announced, like The Witcher 3, which, yes, got leaked, Alien Isolation, Spyro Reignited Trilogy, and many, many more. Finally, there were a couple of new announcements as well, with Travis Touchdown returning in No More Heroes 3 next year, and Nintendo confirming with an excellent and cryptic teaser trailer that a direct sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was in development. Nintendo's Direct didn't lack for gameplay either. Animal Crossing New Horizons, Luigi's Mansion 3, The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening all showed off plenty of gameplay, and they all looked good. Best of all though, the presentation spent exactly as much time on every single thing as it needed to, never lingering on any one announcement for too long, and keeping things moving at a steady clip. It was a fast, packed show, and though there weren't many groundbreaking moments in there, it was entertaining to watch, which is more than can be said for almost all of the other press events. So yes, Nintendo had the best E3 this year. A lot of that is down to companies taking things easy as the generation winds down and holding some of their best stuff for next gen. The lack of gameplay footage in many other conferences also definitely hurt, as did the overly abundant leaks. But that shouldn't take away from the fact that Nintendo's Direct presentation was a solid one. Not an excellent one, sure, but solid. One thing's for sure, with next gen inching closer and everyone gearing up to reveal their big guns for what they will be bringing to newer hardware, E3 2020 is going to be a doozy. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.